In this video I have quite rare device from the 80s, Salora 6600, and it's made in Finland. Really impressive flagship model of its time. First part is basic maintenance and second part is the cassette deck repair, which is very common thing with these specific devices. Maintenance and repairs start with removing the dust cover and record player flywheel so that device can be opened safely. Then just two screws from the sides and whole top part lifts up like a car bonnet and we can see inside. There's also two steel sticks that hold the bonnet up. The plan for this video is to replace all the light bulbs and electrolytic capacitors, then clean and lubricate record player and clean the potentiometers and switches. First the record player. This one is really simple. It's made by Salora, Finnish made, while later models 6600S have dual record player, which is way more complicated. For this record player, just wiping the old grease from the mechanics with cotton stick and then put some fresh grease in and also put contact spray to this speed adjusting potentiometer below the record player. If everything works, this is all we need to do for now. Everything else is much more difficult, but not impossible if you get patient. Next, to get the access to the potentiometers, switches and capacitors, we remove the front panel first. 3 screws up, 3 screws down and all the knobs. Then front panel comes straight out. After that, 2 screws from the front face and we can remove the panel, which is holding the radio channel pointer and the light bulbs. Carefully lift the string out of the way. And be careful when handling these meters. At this point it's also easy to change light bulbs. Nothing tricky with these ones except that the voltage is 14 volts. Do not use 12 volt bulbs because those will be too bright. Next we can remove the PCB with potentiometers. Remove the nuts from the potentiometers and 2 screws from the front face. Take photos to make sure you get all the cables back. Some of these connectors may have same size, so there's a risk of mix-up. Then PCB can be lifted out. Then few more screws and we can remove the lower PCB where all the switches are. Again, more cables out of the way. Then final thing is to remove the main PCB on the middle. This can be done without removing anything else, but it's much easier in this state. Some of the cables are soldered in, so this PCB cannot be lifted out fully, but it can be rotated enough to get access to soldering side. Now we can change all the capacitors and of course it's smart thing to check other solderings as well. I also noticed that safety capacitor was made by Rifa, which means that it will give smoke signals sooner or later. It was already looking quite bad, as well as the fuse holders, so those need to be replaced also. Then contact spray cleanup for the potentiometers and switches, and after that we can start reassembling everything back together in reverse order. Last thing to reinstall is the radio tuner string. Route is quite simple, just make sure that string is not crossing over itself around that white wheel. Also make sure that string makes 2 loops around the tuner knob shaft. Test the tuner knob gently, just in case there's something wrong so you don't break anything by force. Then last place to replace capacitors will be channel amp PCBs. These small separate PCBs have soldered cables, so it's more tricky to remove, but it's much easier to take 3 cables out by soldering rather than changing capacitors while PCB is inside the device. Remember to put new heat paste between the heatsink and the frame when reinstalling. Last thing to do is bias adjustment, and it's really important, especially because over the years these devices have reputation to start overheating, and of course when we replace all the capacitors it will affect the bias, so that's another reason to do this. Service manual instruction was quite unusual because device needs to be cold and bias is measured right after the startup in just 2 seconds. I didn't have enough hands to do everything at once, so first I measured, then adjusted slightly, then measured again to see the change, and after a few rounds I got the values correct. Then I let the device cool down and double checked that values were correct. Now everything is done for part 1, and in part 2 I will continue with cassette deck and show how to reinstall everything.